Hello, I'm Jeremy Vine, and this is Panorama. Dangerous criminals and sex offenders released from prison back into society only to commit further serious crimes. We're told few slip through the net. But exclusive research for Panorama reveals there are more than we're being told about.
Although they say he's monitored, he wasn't monitored enough to stop something as serious as what he's done.
We witness for ourselves the crucial decision-making designed to keep communities safe.
The female victim fought back as she feared she would be raped, and her trousers and top were ripped by the offender.
Its strengths.
We do know he's dangerous, and it's about managing him then in the community.
And its limitations.
It pays never to forget that a great deal of our offenders are extremely intelligent, and by the nature of their offending, often very devious people by nature.
Today, the government released its annual report on how it protects the public from the most dangerous offenders on their release from prison. The report tells us how many serious crimes are committed by known violent criminals and sex offenders. Tonight, Panorama can reveal there are, in fact, many more. So why has the exact number of these crimes been quietly filed away? Is it because, despite all the assurances, there is no sure way to be confident that when freed, a serious offender won't repeat their crime?
Earlier this year, Britain was horrified by the brutal murders of French students Laurent Bonhomme and Gabrielle Ferrez. Now Laurent Bonhomme's parents have invited me to France to talk for the first time about what happened to their son and how they hold our criminal justice system responsible. When the boys left their homes here in France, they were two typical students, excited by what life in London had to offer. But within 2 months of their studies, their lives were ended tragically, and now their families are having to live with the consequences. Laurent's mum, Lydie, is still coming to terms with her son's death.
He called me about 1 week before he died, saying that all his exams were okay. And was so happy. That's the last time I heard his voice.
The boys were talented students invited to study DNA at London's Imperial College. In July last year, police discovered their bodies in a burnt-out flat. Laurent Bonhomme and Gabrielle Ferrez had been murdered in one of the most sickening crimes this country has ever seen. That's not the only reason it became notorious. One of the killers, Dano Sonics, was a violent criminal convicted of armed robbery and knife crimes. He was placed on the multi-agency public protection arrangement, a scheme designed to monitor the most dangerous offenders on their release from prison. Sonics was wrongly placed at the scheme's lowest level and supervised by a single probation officer.
Well, I discovered that Sonics should have been in jail, that he was a very dangerous human being, and I heard there was a report about him saying that he was dangerous and violent, and nobody took care of it. So that kind of action could have saved our children, of course.
Sonics and his accomplice Nigel Farmer broke into Laurent Bonhomme's flat as he and Gabrielle slept. They tortured the French boys at knife point for their cash cards and PIN numbers. CCTV captured Sonics hiding his face on his way to use them as Farmer kept the students hostage. Laurent was stabbed 196 times, his friend Gabrielle 47. The two would then set alight in their flat. This is Nigel Farmer turning himself in before the authorities caught up with Sonics. He should have already been back behind bars after he was caught handling stolen goods, but mistakes made by probation, police and the court meant he was still free.
I know that you've met and spoken to Jack Straw and you received an apology.
Laurent's father cannot accept that so many errors were made and that the MAPA system failed to protect his son. Do you think the mistakes made by the police and the probation service and the justice system led to the death of your son and Gabrielle?
Sure. It's because they have not do their job. If someone is building a wall, is responsible. If the wall fall, the person who live inside. So if someone wants a big responsibility, he has to have a big attitude and to take his responsibility. And Jack Straw is responsible of the Justice Ministry. He is the boss of the responsible of the probation service.
Justice Secretary Jack Straw apologised. The chief of the London Probation Service, David Scott, resigned amidst criticism of mismanagement. Scott accused the government of failing to financially support the service. The case has thrown a spotlight onto the system that is supposed to manage violent criminals like Sonics.
It seems to me that the Sonics case is a metaphor for what is going wrong with the government's supervision of offenders outside prison. The probation officer supervising Sonics had 127 cases to deal with. She was relatively young and inexperienced. They were short of senior probation officers in that division. And here was a young woman faced with supervising a man irregularly, that's to say, not all the time, but perhaps for 15 minutes a week. To keep the public safe, dangerous violent criminals like Sonics and every sex offender are now referred on their release from prison to MAPA, the multi-agency public protection arrangements. These were introduced in 2001 in England and Wales by the then Home Secretary Jack Straw amid public outcry about offences committed by recently released offenders. MAPA brings together the police and probation service to assess what level of supervision an offender will need back in the community. Behind these doors, decisions will be made about what should be done to protect the public from some of the country's most dangerous criminals due to be released from prison on licence. We were granted exclusive access to a MAPA meeting in West Mercia.
He has been sentenced for sexually motivated violent offences. In a pre-sentence report interview, he disclosed he had followed females on at least 2 other occasions with the intention to commit sexual offences, stating on one occasion that he would have raped the victim.
The police, probation, children's services and mental health are holding their second meeting about a man due to be released from prison who attempted to rape a woman in a nightclub.
The female victim fought back as she feared she would be raped, and her trousers and top were ripped by the offender.
The agenda is tight. They have just 45 minutes to discuss today's evidence, including prison reports, psychological assessments and a statement from his victim.
When I saw him that night when he was arrested, it was horrible. He blamed me for the attack and accused me of hitting him. It was terrible and somehow seemed to make what he had done worse. I felt sick at the time and still feel sick now, thinking about him and what he said to me. At this moment in time, I feel that he has spoilt my life. I'm a fighter and I know that eventually I will get back to normal. I'm just surprised by how hard it has all affected me.
It's what's coming out to me really from these reports is that he represents still a very significant risk to women. Then I can't see anything that will at the moment prevent him from behaving like this in the future.
I think he said that the victim was asking for it just by being in the nightclub and was clearly blaming her.
That's right, yeah. The comments which he actually said as he's making himself known over the top of the toilet cubicle was quite revealing. I think he sort of said, "You want it, you slag, and you're going to have it." You know, so I think that reveals what he was thinking at the time.
Specifically then, do you see this case remaining in MAPA level 2?
Are we quite happy to keep it at 2 rather than 3? I just think he poses such a risk. I just wonder whether, in my view, he does anyway.
I think level 3, yeah.
Okay.
The level decided by the team will affect the actions they'll take to watch him. There's 50,000 offenders monitored on one of 3 levels under MAPA across England and Wales. Level 1 offenders are managed by just one agency. They fall into 2 categories: violent offenders who must check in with their probation officer, or sex offenders who are visited by the police. Level 2 are usually watched by both police and probation. Level 3 are known as the critical few. These are considered such high risk, some even require around-the-clock surveillance. But only level 2 and 3 offenders are discussed at MAPA meetings. Sonic should have gone through this process, but he was wrongly classed at level 1 and received the lowest level of supervision.
The other thing is, within the prison, there's no suggestion here that he's been seen by anybody from the InReach.
The MAPA team includes an appointed layperson to raise their concerns. In the case of this violent offender, I've been invited to ask any questions.
If you could just summarise the action you're going to take to try and protect the public from what sounds like a very, very dangerous individual.
You know, I would want, first of all, a police officer to meet him when he comes out with probation, to actually let him know that we're very concerned about him, we're going to be keeping a close eye on him. I would want to make sure whichever area he goes to that the neighbourhood police team knows about him, so they have a picture of him, they know what he looks like, they know the risk he presents.
Surely individuals like this should be sentenced for a very long time in prison. That would be the general public's view, and if MAPA agencies were advocating that that's what should be done, is that not what MAPA agencies do?
With regards to this offence, the charge isn't an attempted rape, it's sexual touching. He's no previous convictions. He wouldn't have been assessed as dangerous at that stage because of the relevant previous factors, and that's what MAPA essentially is for. We do know he's dangerous, and it's about managing him then in the community. This is what we work with.
We operate within the law, and the law determines that this man will be released from prison on a given date, subject to licence, which again is for a determinate period. So we have to work with reality, and that's the reality of sentencing.
The number of offenders on the MAPA scheme keeps rising, up 11,000 in just 4 years. The probation service also has record numbers of offenders to manage on licence because of the pressure on prison places. Harry Fletcher is the chair of NAPO, the Probation Officers Union.
MAPA works in theory, quite clearly, and it works for the 1,000 or so people who pose the highest risk. It also works effectively as it can do for the middle range of people, but the remainder, 39,000 low risk, are not supervised in the same intensive way because there aren't any resources to do it. And frankly, there aren't enough police officers or probation officers to cover the cases that we've got.
The majority of this low-risk group are registered sex offenders. The police are on the front line of their supervision.
Been his offender manager for quite a while now, so I have had...
There's over 31,000 sex offenders across England and Wales. Each force has a dedicated public protection team. Taryn Baddeley and Roger Savage are part of the unit that monitors sex offenders in West Mercia.
Main concerns about those that you manage in the community, what are they?
Probably my main concern is that often I can only act upon what they actually tell me. It pays never to forget that a great deal of our offenders are extremely intelligent, and by the nature of their offending, often very devious people by nature. And I have to be aware that they can be attempting to fool me on occasion.